I never imagined I would risk my career to expose a toxic CEO and unveil their corporate lies. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. The air felt charged, heavy with the smell of burnt coffee lingering in the break room, as my heart pounded in my chest like a caged animal. It was a typical Tuesday morning until that urgent email landed in my inbox. I froze, my fingers trembling over the keyboard. A chilling warning from an anonymous source unraveling secrets buried beneath polished conference room tables and behind closed office doors. I glanced around, my coworkers oblivious, wrapping themselves in laughter and casual chatter. But I felt the distance, a widening gap between their carefree smiles and my rising dread. I worked in the marketing department, part of a web spun by our enigmatic CEO, a man whose charm masked a jagged edge. He had an uncanny ability to instill fear, a whisper here, a scornful glance there. He ruled through intimidation. The office walls had heard the cold echoes of his rage, and I was not immune to its reach. As I delved deeper into the details of that email, my mind raced. Company funds, misdirected, siphoned off into dubious investments. I pictured the gleaming high-rises and luxury cars, representations of a life fueled by this corporate deception. My stomach twisted. I thought of my family, their solid belief in my decisions, my dreams of success, a life built on integrity. How could I face them if I remained silent? But then, what would happen if I spoke up? A sense of urgency crept over me. I needed to act, but the stakes were high. I could feel their eyes, my colleagues' stares boring into me, disgust and surprise painting their expressions as they discovered my hidden ambition. I slipped into the quiet of a nearby conference room. The fluorescent lights buzzed above like angry bees. I took a deep breath. Fact after fact bubbled to the surface, each one more explosive than the last, clearer than the path I sought. Yet, with each revelation, my resolve quivered. Sacrifice was on the horizon, and the fear of losing my career tightened its grip around my throat. Just as I began to think of my next move, a shadow passed by the glass door. A familiar face edged closer, and all at once, my heart dropped. It was Jake, the CEO's right-hand man, with a reputation for being ruthless. We locked eyes for a breath, his expression unreadable, then he turned away, a faint smirk tracing his lips. What did he know? What was coming for me? A rush of anxiety and adrenaline coursed through me. It was clear, no turning back now. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead, a strobe of anxiety, as I remained frozen in that conference room. My heart raced, the sound echoing in my ears like an impending storm. I could hear the hum of conversation outside, the world continuing as usual while mine spiraled into chaos. The clash between duty and fear gnawed at me, and I struggled to breathe, each inhale laced with dread. That I reached for my phone, fingers shaking, a lifeline to those who might believe in my cause. But as I opened my contacts, I hesitated. Tina, my closest ally, was already weary of the rumors spreading around the office, growing less supportive as days turned into weeks. The burden of these secrets weighed heavily on both of us, our friendship strained under the shadow of impending doom. I couldn't risk her safety or my own by bringing her deeper into my plans. Instead, I composed a message to the anonymous source, my hands trembling as I typed. I want to help. What's the next step? I barely managed to hit send before the weight of my decision crashed down on me. Would I be signing my own death warrant at work? With a deep breath, I forced myself to remember my family, the sacrifices they made for me to be here, and how much they would believe in me if I took this leap. Suddenly, the door creaked open, and I looked up to see Mia, a junior analyst from the finance team, her face pale but determined. Can I come in? She asked, looking over her shoulder as if expecting someone to follow. That I gestured for her to enter, my heart racing anew. Her eyes sparkled with urgency, the atmosphere shifting. "I think I know what you're planning," she whispered, closing the door behind her. My stomach lurched. "You do?" Mia was one of the few people in the office who seemed to navigate around the CEO's ire with an uncanny grace and intuitive calmness that made her a favorite among colleagues. Yet, despite her suavity, I sensed she bore her own struggles under the surface. "I've been digging into those financial reports, too." "There's something wrong," she murmured. A flicker of hope ignited within me. "What have you found?" Her voice dropped to a hush. "There are discrepancies, large ones. I've noticed invoices that don't match up with what we're producing. It's not just rumors, it's real." Mia's confidence crumbled briefly, and she lowered her gaze. "But I'm scared, too. I don't want to lose my job." The weight of her revelation wrapped around my heart, both terrifying and exhilarating. "What if we work together? If we share what we know, we might have a shot." "We could," but before I could finish, the door burst open, and Jake stood there, backlit by the fluorescent lights. It was as though the air had vanished, and panic twisted my insides. His shoulders were squared in a tight suit, a sharp contrast to the rest of us, who wore our anxiety like a second skin. "What's going on in here?" he asked, voice smooth like ice. I swallowed hard. Mia's eyes widened, and she instinctively moved closer to me, leaning into my resolve. "Just discussing projections for Q3, I lied, my voice trembling slightly. Jake arched a brow, studying us both. The moment stretched like taffy, the silence heavy with untold accusations. "You really shouldn't be in this room, Mia," he said, his tone deceptively even. "You know how management feels about personal discussions during work hours." Mia blinked, fear rifling through her expression, but I stepped forward. "We were just getting back to work," I emphasized, forcing myself to ground my voice. "Nothing for you to worry about." He held my gaze for a long moment, and I felt the weight of his scrutiny, as if he could see through the fragile facade I tried to uphold. A flicker of uncertainty crossed his face before he finally turned to leave, but he paused at the door. "Make sure you both stay focused. We wouldn't want anyone getting distracted by wild theories." The threat in his voice hung heavily in the air as he exited. I exhaled slowly, my heart still racing, realizing how closely I had danced with danger. Mia glanced at me with a mix of fear and determination. "We need to act. If he suspects anything, we're in trouble." I nodded, but the thought of exposure gnawed at me. Reality loomed large. My fight for truth was becoming a tangled web of deception and very real threats. But how? What do we do next? A resounding silence hung as we battled our insecurities. Just as the darkness seemed to close in, a flicker caught the corner of my eye. A sticky note was pinned to the door from the outside, and I moved closer to examine it. In bold, jagged handwriting, it read, "I know what you're trying to do. You're not alone." My heart dropped and swelled all at once, a rush of both fear and a spark of fresh hope. But who had sent it, and what did they know? As the weight of suspense settled around us, I knew that this journey was about to take one unpredictable turn after another, and we were at the precipice of something much bigger than just our own fears. The fluorescent lights buzzed like a swarm of bees overhead, their dimming hum echoing the chaos swirling inside me. I felt the cool, crumpled note in my palm, my fingers grazing over the jagged handwriting as if trying to decipher a code. "I know what you're trying to do. You're not alone." The unsettling blend of fear and hope surged through me. I was teetering on the edge of an abyss, uncertain whether to step back or plunge deeper. "What does it mean?" Mia whispered, her brow knit in confusion. She stepped closer, curiosity mixed with fear evident in her eyes. "Who sent this?" "I have no idea," I replied, voice slightly shaky. But I felt an undeniable pull towards the note, as if it held the key to a door I hadn't even known existed. "What if it's a trap, or a lifeline?" she suggested cautiously, glancing at the door as if Jake might return at any moment. "We need to find out who it was from." I hesitated. If we were to pursue this lead, it meant stepping into even murkier waters. Could it be from someone in the office? A whistleblower? The thought both thrilled and terrified me. Mia nodded, her determination steadfast. We should ask around, say we've heard rumors too. See if anyone reacts. And we could look for other signs. I felt a rush of vulnerability at the idea of speaking to my colleagues about this. My trust in them had withered like autumn leaves, brittle and dry. Yet, the taste of resolve settled in my chest, igniting a flicker of defiance. Okay. We do it together, she smiled, a brief flash of solidarity cutting through the tension, and we both paused to breathe, gathering the courage that had slowly begun to fade away under the pressure of our fears. As we left the conference room, I noticed the office was busier than usual. A few conversations hushed as we passed, the air was thick with urgency. My heart raced, wondering how many of these familiar faces were harboring secrets of their own. I motioned Mia toward an unoccupied office down the hall, whispering, "We can use Mark's desk." "He's out." Once inside, I placed the note on the desk, staring at it like it was a live wire. "We can't approach everyone at once. Let's start with someone we trust." Maybe Mia's gaze drifted, and she tugged at her sleeve, deep in thought. "What about Carla? She seems connected. Plus, she's a good listener." Her confidence was a balm, wrapping around my growing anxiety. If her instincts are right, she might already suspect something. I mulled it over for a moment. Carla was wise, quick-witted, and had been a staunch ally in difficult meetings. We should be careful. If Jake is watching, he'll be able to tell if we're acting strange. The plan settled, but unease coiled in the pit of my stomach. We left the temporary refuge of Mark's office, walking toward the break room, the bustling conversations morphing into background noise as my heart thumped loud enough to drown it out. As we approached, Carla stood at the coffee machine, chatting with Janet from HR. Just as we reached them, Carla looked up, a flicker of recognition crossing her face. "Hey. I was just talking about you too. I heard something interesting today." "Like what?" I asked cautiously, glancing at Mia, who mirrored my apprehension. Carla leaned in, lowering her voice. "You know those budget cuts they announced? Well, people are saying they're laying people off next month like out of nowhere. Rumor has it that it's part of a much bigger initiative." Something sinister. A chill crept along my spine. "Do you think it's true?" I asked, heart pounding. She nodded hesitantly. "I spoke with someone who's heard whispers about shady deals. It's not just across departments, it's the top level, the C-suite. People are scared, and they have every reason to be. I exchanged a glance with Mia. "What do you know about Jake?" "I mean really," Carla's expression faltered, lips pressing into a thin line. "He's not just a great manager, he's a very dangerous man. Nobody stands up to him, no one dares. I've seen careers ruined in his wake." My heart sank, and a wave of helplessness swept over me. We were treading thin ice, and the cracks were widening. What if we told, like, the board or even the media? Mia suggested, the fire of rebellion igniting within her. Carla shook her head fiercely. "You think it's that simple? You'll risk everything you have and people won't believe you. It's not just the CEO, it's a whole system protecting him." During that moment of silence laden with the weight of our choices, the fluorescent light above flickered ominously. The shadows felt heavier, more malicious. I took a step back, my mind racing with possibilities and fears, submerged in a whirlpool of doubt. "Mia, we can't ignore this. We need to act." The urgency in my voice surprised even me. "If there's even a slight chance of corruption within the company, it can't go unpunished, but we're risking everything, including our careers, our lives," Mia countered, panic beginning to seep into her features. "Maybe," Carla interrupted, "but if you're planning to expose this, you need evidence. You can't bring a whisper to a storm." As I stood there, caught in the crosshairs of uncertainty and purpose, a piercing scream echoed through the office corridors. It sliced through the hum of conversations like glass shattering. Panic arose, and we dashed toward the source, hearts pounding, adrenaline surged. The reception area was in chaos, the sound of frantic voices rising above the clamor. A crowd had gathered, faces pale with shock. There, in the center, lay a crumpled figure, one of our colleagues, cradled by others, their terrified faces staring back at us. I leaned in to hear the whispers. They claimed it was Jake who demanded they resign or face the consequences. The injustice of it seeped into my veins, the weight of it crashing down harder than any fear we had faced before. As I stood frozen, the haunting question echoed in my mind. What price were we willing to pay to uncover the truth? In the distance, a ghostly voice called my name, a reminder that this was merely the beginning, and we were spiraling deeper into a darkness we might never escape. I took a deep breath, feeling the ground shift beneath me. The world was unraveling, and every second felt like a countdown to inevitable despair. As the chaos swallowed the reception area, I felt as though I was standing on the precipice of a cliff, the dark abyss below daring me to jump. Fear rippled through the crowd, a collective fear that mingled with a sense of urgency, an electric energy pulsating in the air. I pushed my way through the throng, desperate to catch a glimpse of the crumpled figure sprawled on the floor, my heart racing with an unsettling mixture of concern and curiosity. Jake's voice echoed through the mayhem, sharp and cutting. "Get back to your desks. There's nothing to see here." His words poured out like venom, saturating the atmosphere with fear. As I looked down, I recognized the face of Brian, a young man who had been nothing but kind to me during my early days at the firm. Now, he lay lifeless, eyes wide and unseeing, the weight of countless unuttered stories resting heavy on his heart, stories that would never be told. The stark reality of his situation wrapped around me like an icy blanket, solidifying my resolve. "What happened?" I managed to whisper, yet the words felt as fragile as the very fabric of this moment. A sudden sense of clarity surged within me despite my rising panic. "Just chaos." He confronted Jake about the rumors, the layoffs. Mia's voice trembled next to me, and I could feel her hands shaking. "They all said he had been scared to bring it up, but we didn't think it would end like this." I turned my attention back to the scene, my ears tuning into hushed whispers around us. Did he really threaten Brian? Did he push him to this? Shivers of disbelief shot through me, igniting the fury that simmered just beneath the surface. The collective grief of the office began to transform into a bubbling anger. I saw it glimmer in the eyes of those around me, faces that had always previously carried the weight of compliance. "That we can't let this be forgotten," I managed to say, invigorated by a sudden surge of defiance. "This isn't just about us anymore, it's about everyone in this office." Mia nodded, enthusiasm mixing with doubt. "But confronting him, are we ready for that? Do we really think we can take him down?" A soft hand grasped my shoulder. It was Carla. Her expression was grave, and though it struck a chord of fear within me, I could also discern a flicker of something else: hope. "If we band together, we might stand a chance. He thinks he's untouchable. But every tyrant has a weakness." That I inhaled slowly, absorbing her words like a lifeline. "What if we set a trap? Get him to speak without realizing we're listening?" Carla's eyes sparkled with determination. "A secret meeting. We find a way to lure him in. Once we have him on tape, incriminating him, it could change everything." Before I had the chance to respond, a voice called out, sending a wave of dread through my body. "We're not going to let this happen again, are we?" It was Mark, the office's once beloved IT consultant and a man who had always known how to navigate the dark waters of corporate politics. Hope doing battle with a tiny flutter of disbelief, I was drawn to his earnest gaze. "What do you mean?" I asked, my breath catching in my throat. He took a step closer, lowering his voice into a conspiratorial whisper. "Brian wasn't the first, but he can't be the last. We're not alone in this fight. There are whispers, discussions among the staff. I've been gathering evidence anonymously. If we come together, we could build a case that even Jake would struggle to suppress." Mia's eyes widened, reflecting the glimmer of newfound strength. "We could bring everyone together, rally them. But we need to tread carefully." "If Jake finds out, he won't," Mark replied firmly. "Well, keep this discreet. We can create a safe space for people to voice their fears and stories. Share the proof I've collected, slowly, and build momentum." The solidarity felt like warm rays piercing the heavy storm clouds that loomed above us. But the uncertainty remained, a shadow gnawing at the edges of my fragile resolve. As we began to formulate our plan, I noticed a figure watching us from the corner of the room. Jenna, a colleague I had thought was uninvolved. Her expression was impassive, yet her eyes betrayed a broiling unrest. I had never realized how deeply others were affected until that moment. "Where are you going with this?" she interjected softly, yet her voice carried the weight of 1,000 afflictions. "Jenna," I said, my heart pounding in solidarity. We're going to fight back. We can't keep silent anymore. As she took a step closer, uncertainty flashed across her face. And what if he retaliates? Those words hung in the air, a taut string ready to snap. An unspoken fear all of us shared. A collective gasp echoed across the room as Brian's lifeless body was carefully taken away, reminding us all of what was truly at stake. It's now or never, I urged, adrenaline coursing through my veins. Now is our moment. There are too many of us losing our lives day by day, whether it be the risk of a pink slip or something far worse. As people around began to nod in agreement, embers of hope rekindled among us. But just then, the thrumming chaos of rapid footsteps turned my blood to ice. Jake emerged, his presence electrifying the once supportive atmosphere. What's all this commotion about? He boomed, his eyes blazing like twin daggers. The last embers of courage collided with the overwhelming weight of fear. I felt my heart drop as he scanned the room, and I knew in that moment, nothing would ever be the same again. The clock was ticking, and we were out of time. This was the precipice not just for careers, but for souls desperately intertwined in the fight for something greater. Would this be our downfall, or would it finally force the truth into the light? We stood on the brink, teetering towards a conflict that threatened to engulf us all, and just as I thought we might take the leap, the ground shifted once more beneath us. The connection echoed in the corridors of our fearsome message within a message, an earlier warning racing toward me like a freight train. With newfound urgency, I leaned closer to Mia and whispered, what if the message was more than a warning? What if it was an invitation? An unsolicited lifeline to not just save us, but save countless others. The churning uncertainty morphed into tangible determination, and I knew one thing for sure. When the dust settled, the truth would rise, whether we liked it or not. The tension hung like a thick fog in the air as Jake's glare pierced through us, an invisible weight threatening to stifle our already fragile spirit. His presence was suffocating, a dark cloud that loomed over the flickering ember of hope we had ignited among ourselves. What are you all whispering about? He demanded, stepping closer, the sharpness in his tone slicing through the silence, revealing our hidden vulnerability. Just brainstorming, Mark replied, bravely attempting to deflect the storm gathering overhead. Trying to figure out how to improve workplace morale. The way he spoke felt like a shield, but Jake saw right through it. Morale? You think we need another team-building exercise? He scoffed with contempt, the corners of his mouth curling into a dismissive sneer. Get back to your work, or I will make sure it will be your last day here. The fear that had settled deep in our chests felt like a spider spinning its web, tightening around us. I was frozen, my heart racing against the relentless ticking of the clock. I peeked at Mia, her eyes bright with determination. Did she see what I saw in the darkness? A crack in his facade, growing larger each passing day, filled with the frustrations of the cornered people he oppressed. As he turned to storm away, one of the junior analysts, Rachel, called out, "What about Brian? Don't we deserve answers?" She spoke with a tremor, but her voice echoed through the room, rippling the atmosphere charged with fear. Jake halted, his back stiffening at the sound of her challenge. He spun around, fury radiating from him like heat from a fire. "Do not bring up that name again, or you'll wish you hadn't," he spat, and for a moment, I thought he might snap under the pressure. I saw the ripple of fear spread through the crowd, but I also observed glimpses of rebellion glinting in their eyes, seeds of resistance starting to sprout beneath the surface. "Don't you see?" I shouted, unable to contain myself any longer. This is exactly what he wants. For us to cower in fear. For us to remain silent. If we don't stand together now, Brian's death will just be another statistic, another reminder of what happens when we allow bullies to reign. The words rushed out of me, fervent and desperate, and I could feel the stirred emotions pooling in the hearts of my colleagues. For a fleeting moment, I hoped they might spill over into courage, but Jake's laughter sent chills down my spine. Unity? In this office? His laughter felt cruel, manic. Let me know how that goes for you, but I'm not concerned. You're all replaceable. Every single one of you. With that, he turned to leave, throwing one last contemptuous glance in our direction. A heavy silence enveloped us as he walked away, the remnants of his threat lingering like stale smoke. Regret clung in the air, blending into the scalding soup of our collective fears. Were we truly prepared to take on a man like Jake? "Do you really think we can do this?" Mia whispered, her faith flickering like a dying candle that I took her hand, pulling her to me, offering what little warmth I could. We have to try, Mia. If we do nothing, we condemn ourselves to living in this nightmare forever. We can't squander this fight for Brian, for each other. A small murmur of agreement broke out, slowly building into a roar of passionate conviction. In that moment, I realized that something had shifted. The hesitations we wore like shackles were beginning to dissolve. We were invested, woven together into a tapestry of shared pain, ready to confront the monster lurking in our midst. Just as the pulse of hope began to crescendo, an unexpected voice broke through the swelling tide. Jenna stepped forward, her face pale but resolute. I know someone. A journalist. If we're going to do this, we need to tell the world what we know. Who? I asked, anxiety curling around my heart. We can't risk exposing ourselves, she nodded, determination blazing in her eyes. She's been after corporate malfeasance for years, has a reputation for digging deep. If we provide her with everything we have, she can help us expose the truth. A wave of questions surged through the room. Would revealing our stories to the press put us all in jeopardy? But the alternative was far worse. Life spent suffocated by fear, haunted by silent screams for change. Suddenly, Mark's phone vibrated, cutting through our turbulent thoughts. He glanced at the screen, his expression shifting from intrigue to alarm. It's about Brian's family. They're planning to speak to the media tomorrow. If we don't act fast, everything could shift again before we even begin. A knot tightened in my stomach. We were running out of time. I could hear the sirens blaring, the call for urgency, for action. But the road ahead felt treacherous, littered with uncertainties. Then we need to move now, I urged, steeling myself against the chaotic tangle of emotions. Let's gather what we have and reach out to Jenna's contact. If we can align ourselves with Brian's family, building a united front could amplify our strength. As we prepared to take our steps into the unknown, my heart raced, not just with fear but with a flicker of defiance. The tide was turning, and it wasn't just Brian's story, Anna Marie, it was ours. But just as we began to discuss our strategy, a notification lit up my phone. I peered down at the message, blood running cold as realization struck. It was from an anonymous number warning me, stop what you're doing or suffer the consequences. Before I could even process the threat, the doors swung open again, and in walked a figure I didn't expect to see, Jake, a predatory smile curving his lips as he scanned the room. I thought I heard commotion. It seems we might still have business to discuss. After all, the very ground beneath our feet felt dangerously unstable as my heart sank, the weight of impending doom pressing against my chest. We were not just standing on the precipice of a moral choice. We were now facing the raging sea pushing us toward an uncertain fate, one filled with vengeance, truth, and the cautious promise that perhaps, just perhaps, we might fight back. The air in the room thickened as Jake's presence loomed like a storm cloud ready to unleash its fury upon us. My heart thudded violently against my ribcage, each pulse echoing the urgency of the moment. We had just started to bolster the fragile threads of our rebellion, and now, faced with his sudden reappearance, I felt those threads fray under the glare of his hawkish eyes. That we were just discussing, I began, trying to summon the bravery coiling within my chest. Every instinct screamed to keep quiet, to retreat into the shadows of the familiar, but I needed them to see me stand firm. Discussing how we can do better, how we can be a team, the derision in Jake's laugh pierced through our fragile resolve. A team? You all think you're in some feel-good movie? Might I remind you, this is business, a ruthless game where the weak are left behind. He leaned on the edge of a desk, the veneer of his smile barely masking the menace beneath. You think the press will care about your little talk of unity when they can savor the blood in the water? You think they will believe the words of a group of disgruntled employees? For a moment, I felt myself wavering under the weight of his scorn. Doubt crowded my mind. He painted a bleak picture, one that made my heart holler with fear. Yet amidst this uncertainty, the flicker of hope in Mia's eyes struck a chord deep within me, urging me not to surrender. What if we do it right? Mia stepped forward, her voice gaining strength as she approached him. What if we present evidence? What if our fight isn't just some pitiful plea for sympathy? We have each other, and we have the truth on our side. Jake turned his icy gaze onto her, almost considering this small seedling of revolt. You think truth matters in a world like this? His voice was a low growl that seemed to echo off the walls, but in her unwavering stare, I thought I saw him falter, albeit for a fleeting moment, but then, the cruel twist of fate descended upon us. The sudden piercing ring of a phone interrupted our tense moment, and Jenna, who had just stepped out to organize the potential connection with the journalist, appeared in the doorway, wild-eyed. "I'm sorry," she called out, stumbling across the threshold. "But I have to tell you there's been a development with Brian's case." The dread coiling in my stomach twisted painfully tighter. I wasn't prepared for distractions, not now, when every second counted. "Jenna, not now," but she didn't waver. "They reported that his accident might not have been an accident at all. There are whispers I think Jake might be connected." A gasp resonated in the room, a collective inhalation of disbelief. It felt as though the very air had shifted, thick with conspiracies and accusations that now loomed like swords over our heads. Could this be the leverage we needed? But if Jake was involved, what was the extent of his malice? Jake snapped his head towards her, his composure crumbling, revealing the shark beneath the polished surface of his corporate demeanor. "What are you talking about, Jenna?" His voice dipped dangerously low, the simmering threat surfacing once more. "Evidence has surfaced suggesting corporate sabotage," she pressed forward, shaking with rage and fear. "They want to know what really happened to Brian, and I think we can make them listen. We need to act fast before what?" Jake interjected, stepping forward in a haze of anger, narrowing his eyes at Jenna with an intensity that felt like a weapon poised to strike. "You're playing a dangerous game. Just know you all have more to lose than you think." Rachel, emboldened by the scintilla of bravery ignited in the air, called out to him, "You don't scare us. We're tired of playing safe. We're ready to expose the truth." "Are you, really?" Jake's smile dipped dangerously, sending chills down my spine. "Because here's the thing, if you decide to pursue this, it'll make sure you all regret it. This is a big world, and trust me, I can make you disappear in a blink. You'll be put on the list of irrelevant." Fear gripped my throat, causing my breath to hitch. For a moment, I considered his words, how they mingled with the responsibility growing heavy on our shoulders. But as I looked around the room, there stood my colleagues, faces set in defiance, hearts pounding with the same determination. I knew what we were fighting for. It was more than Brian now. It was for every invisible mark that had been oppressed by the oppressive snarl that Jake imposed, for every voice silenced in that office that sought a chance to resonate. "Well, take our chances," I found myself saying, gaining strength from every shared gaze around me. "This is bigger than fear. This is about justice. Not just for us, but for all those who have walked this path before." In that moment of courage, even as the weight of Jake's counterattack bore down upon us, I felt the ember of rebellion begin to spark into a preliminary flame. I could feel the urge to fight overshadow the dread. We needed to arm ourselves for the battle ahead, but just as that flame flickered brighter, a loud crash echoed from the hallway outside, followed by frantic voices. The air shifted again, heavy with the tension of uncertainty. It swiftly plunged us into apprehension. I gasped as Mark's face drained of color. "Something's happening," he breathed, panic seeping into his demeanor. "We need to see what's going on." Before any of us could react, Jenna's phone rang, cutting through the tumult like a knife. Her face blanched further as she answered. "What? No, that can't be. You're sure?" She pressed the phone closer to her ear, a look of disbelief crossing her features. "Tell me they're okay. What's happening?" I begged, taking a step closer. She hung up, her face pallid. "Brian's family, they're withdrawing from the press conference. They've been threatened. They said if they speak out, they'll lose everything." My heart plummeted, the world around me falling into a deafening silence, each word reverberating with the weight of a coming storm. How could we still fight if the very family at the heart of our crusade feared for their lives? Jake's smug demeanor returned, a predator ready to strike. "Such a shame, isn't it?" he taunted, relishing the chaos enveloping us. What a pity when fear becomes more powerful than justice. In that moment, as despair threatened to engulf us whole, I caught the eyes of my co-workers, knowing deep inside that our resolve would be tested in ways we couldn't yet foresee. This was just the beginning, and though we faced insurmountable odds, I clung to the spark igniting amidst the shadows of our turmoil. And as I steeled myself for the confrontation to come, I whispered into the chaos, knowing a truth that would become my newfound mantra: we will fight. The pulse of uncertainty thrummed through the stillness that blanketed us, rattling the air like the unsettled wind before a storm. Brian's family's fears reverberated within me, sparking a chilling realization of the limitations we faced. Hope felt like a fraying tether, but my heart beat defiantly against the encroaching despair. "Look," I said, striving to steady my voice, "this can't be the end. If they're being threatened, it means we're onto something." "We won't let them silence us." "Easier said than done," Jenna whispered, her brow creased in worry. I ached to reach out to her, to tell her we were still in this together, but the fright in her eyes warned me of the depth of her fears. As the muffled voices echoed from the hallway, hungry whispers, the scent of dread trickling through guesswork, I stole a glance back at Jake. His features were hard, unreadable, but in his eyes, I could see something lurking, a flicker of worries he tried to mask. It galled me how moments of shuddering guilt sometimes lurked behind the bravado of the oppressor. "Let's not fall apart now," Rachel said, her voice wavering but resolute. "If we can get verification about those threats, if we can confirm that Jake is involved, it would give us the ammunition we need." "But how?" Mark interjected, running a hand through his disheveled hair in agitation. "If they're already being pressured, their communication channels could be monitored. We need to tread carefully here." I nodded, feeling the rush of ideas begin to simmer within me. "We need allies. People with influence. If we can get the right journalists, the story could spread like wildfire." Mark frowned. "And what if they refuse to help? What if this all backfires?" The soft ding of Jenna's phone startled us, and she checked the message, biting her lip while her eyes darted across the screen. "It's an old friend from college," she said hesitantly. "She works for a news outlet. She wants to meet, wants to know more about Brian's case. It could be a chance to get the truth out." "Then we take it," I urged, feeling adrenaline surge through me. "We can't wait for the storm to pass if we want to tame it. This could be our moment." Just as Jenna nodded, the commotion outside intensified, blending into a tempest of shouts and uncertainty. It felt as if the walls were closing in, and it crawled under my skin, making my stomach churn. I could see Jake's posture change, a hint of unease cracking his facade, and I couldn't help but wonder what he might be hiding. "Things are about to change," Jake warned, his voice low but firm. "You think you can go on this way? You're playing with fire, and one wrong move could mean midnight or worse." "That's enough," I boldly retorted, steeled by the gravity of our shared determination. "You've already shown us how far you're willing to go to maintain your throne. But we're not afraid. We're prepared to stand up, and if it all comes crashing down, we'll take you with us." A silence settled between us, heavy with the tension crackling in the air like static, stretching beyond the surface into unspoken emotions. Jake scoffed, but the tremor in his lip betrayed his bravado. Suddenly, the door burst open with a force that made us all jump. A frantic herald rushed in, sweat glistening on his brow, his breath coming in rapid gasps. "They're calling for you, Jake. The board wants to discuss the situation, and they're not happy," he said hurriedly, almost stammering from anxiety. "It's bad, really bad." That moment, a flicker of hope kindled inside me amidst the looming shadows. Jake's authority, his facade of strength, began to crack under the pressure of impending scrutiny. "You need to go, don't you?" I said, a hint of satisfaction lacing my words. "I will deal with you later," Jake hissed before storming out, the tumult following him like shadows retreating at dawn. "Did you notice?" Mia whispered, leaning towards us, her eyes wide with excitement. "He looked shaken." "This is our chance." Jake's retreating figure echoed down the hall, a flood of adrenaline surged through me. The chaos outside began to feel like a boon, perhaps an opportunity we hadn't anticipated. All of us shared a silent agreement, each glance confirming our urgency. "Jenna, message your friend. We need to move fast, before anything else changes," I urged, glancing around to gauge our next steps. "And we need a plan. We can't act without one." Mark pulled out his notebook, scribbling furiously. Rachel brought forth details, piecing together the foundation of our fight. Just as we established a rhythm, the shrill sound of the fire alarm shattered our focus, the cacophony clashing against the silence like a warning bell. "Not again." Mark groaned, frustration lacing his voice as he surveyed the room. "Stay calm," I commanded, trying to quell the brewing panic. It's probably a drill. We can still gather, but my words were drowned out as the harsh voice of the intercom blared across the building. Attention, all personnel must evacuate immediately. This is not a drill. I repeat, this is not a drill, not a drill. Mia echoed, eyes wide with alarm. A rush of urgency crushed down upon us as uncertainty reared its head. What if this was a diversion? What if Jake had something to do with it? No time to waste. We're leaving, I declared, pushing through the swirling anxiety. One way or another, we'll find our way to the truth. As we fled, the corridor engulfed in confusion and fear, I felt something deep within me solidity, a sense of purpose I had never known before. We were all risking everything, standing at the precipice of the unknown, but I knew one thing with crystal clarity: we would not back down. Just as we reached the exit, a chilling thought flickered through my mind, a revelation that sent my heart racing with dread. What if he's planned this all along? I whispered, the staggering implications creating cracks in my initial resolve. And it was then, amid the chaos, that I realized the stakes were higher than any of us had dared to comprehend. The truth demanded sacrifice, and we were about to step into a storm that would test the very essence of who we were. The clamor surrounding us was deafening as we spilled into the open air, the cold wind slicing past, catching our breaths before they could escape our lips. The stark reality of the situation weighed heavy, settling in our bones. We were stepping into chaos, a wild dance of uncertainty, but now there was no turning back. Over here. Jenna's voice beckoned, and like moths drawn to a flickering flame, we followed her toward the main parking lot where an uneasy throng of employees congregated, filled with confusion and anxiety. Tension rippled through the crowd, shoulders hunched and whispers spiraling into frantic questions. Where's Jake? Mark murmured, scanning the sea of unfamiliar faces. The absence of the man who had steered us into this turmoil felt sinister, a piece of the puzzle we urgently needed. Maybe he's? Rachel began but trailed off, her words swallowed by the cacophony around us. No, he wouldn't just leave. Jenna fished out her phone, her fingers a blur as she typed yet again, seeking contact with her college friend, the flicker of hope still warm in her chest. But when the screen lit up with no service, reality crashed down upon us anew. He's coming back, I stated, though dread gnawed at my insides. We need to gather what we can from the crowd. If anyone knows where he might be. My voice wavered, the impulse to protect ourselves leaving a bitter taste. Every moment of uncertainty tightened its grip around our hearts. Let's split up, Mia suggested, her eyes gleaming with determination. We can cover more ground that way. Reluctantly, we dispersed, each carrying a piece of the weight, and I drifted toward a small group of employees huddled together, their faces pale and anxious. A muffled sob broke through. Melissa, a meek accountant from our department, clutched a colleague's arm, her breath hitching as she spoke. I heard they're trying to silence anyone who speaks out. Maybe it's just the fire drill, one man interjected, though his voice held an edge of uncertainty. Things are getting too heated. That I stepped closer, forging my way into the tight circle. What do you mean by that? I asked gently, hands trembling slightly. They sent out messages, Melissa continued, her eyes darting nervously. People who tried to talk to the media. I don't think they'll be safe. They've warned us, but I didn't take it seriously until now. The words settled heavily like bricks in my stomach. It suddenly became clear that we were not the only ones threatened by Jake's corporate cruelty. Ripples of fear pulsed throughout the entire workforce. I reached for Melissa's hands, squeezing them softly. We won't let them intimidate us. We're gathering evidence, speaking to the media. You're not alone in this. Just as hope shimmered momentarily in the gloom, the alarm sounded a sound more sinister than before, a series of clicks echoing ominously. A sinking realization pulled me deeper into the depths. I clutched my phone, scanning desperately for any sign of communication, any message from Jenna. Where was she? Everyone, please, remain calm. The resonating voice of the intercom pierced the air, devoid of warmth. We are investigating a security threat. Please prepare to exit the premises in an orderly fashion. Security threat? The words hung over us, an ominous cloud casting shadows of despair. Was Jake involved? Was this the diversion he needed to ensure our silence while he plotted his next move? Guys. Jenna suddenly burst through the crowd, panting and flushed from sprinting around the lot. Her eyes were wild as she thrust her phone forward. I got through. My friend is interested, and she's on her way. But her voice trembled, apprehension gnawing at her. But? I echoed, my heart racing and a sense of urgency clawing at me. There's been a hacking incident, she whispered. The entire board is under threat, and they suspect anyone who spoke against them. We're not just being silenced, we're being targeted. Panic threatened to cascade through me. But it was then I noticed something strange about the people around us. A quiet wave of realization washed over the employees as they looked around, a flicker of solidarity igniting in their eyes. A few started to nod, whispering encouragement to each other, sharing tales of resilience against the backdrop of fear. Then, a sound erupted, a crashing noise, echoing from the entrance of the building. Our heads snapped toward the commotion, and gasps rose from the crowd as an object flew through the air, landing ominously at our feet. A maniacal figure burst through the doors, a hooded jacket shrouding their identity, Jake. The crowd collectively gasped, their attention snatched away from the gathering storm of uncertainty. Angry and frantic, he waved his arms as though trying to disperse us, a harried expression consuming his face. Get out. You have to get out now. His voice strained against the noise, and panic twisted every word. That I felt a chill sweep over us, a mixture of foreboding and disbelief, and I knew then that our lives were about to change irreversibly. What's happening? I shouted back, moving toward him, desperate for truth. Jake's gaze flickered towards something beyond us, fear stark on his features as if he were seeing a nightmare unfold. It's too late. You're all in danger. But before he could finish, the world warped into chaos. The air trembled with waves of confusion, and the scene warped as the crowd surged forward in panic, their fog of uncertainty morphing into a reality we could never predict. A cold horror settled in my chest as I grasped the gravity of our situation and the sacrifices looming on the horizon. In that instant, I understood that not only was Jake still a threat, but we had stepped into a trap we could not escape, and as I turned to look for my friends, the unsettling thought darkened my heart. What if Jake had never been the true enemy? What if the fight for the truth was just the beginning of a war far graver than we imagined? The thrumming pulse of chaos surrounded us, every beat resonating with trepidation as I searched desperately for a way to anchor myself. The crowd surged like a tide, a living organism fueled by fear. I caught glimpses of familiar faces slipping through the fray, each one reflecting the same blend of apprehension and resolve that pulsed through my own veins. But where was Rachel? Where was Mia? Get back! Jake shouted again, his voice slicing through the commotion, but the sheer force of panic drowned his words. They rushed past me, bodies colliding, the scent of sweat mingling with the sharp scent of dread. I wanted to sprint toward him, to demand answers, but the reluctance to abandon my friends held me in place. The sight of Jake disheveled, frantic, almost haunted sent a shiver down my spine. Suddenly, I caught sight of a familiar figure, her fiery red hair a beacon amidst the chaos. Rachel, weaving through the throng, her expression fierce and determined, made her way to me, breathless but unyielding. We need to get out of here, they're blocking the exits. We can't leave Jake. I protested, torn between loyalty to our friend and the instinct to flee. He's not our friend anymore. Rachel snapped, her brows knitting together. He put us in this mess. We have to think of ourselves. The knot of uncertainty twisted tighter in my gut as fear battled with my resolve. Perhaps Rachel was right. But as I considered the possibility, dread washed over me anew. If Jake was truly in danger, could I ever forgive myself for abandoning him? As if my thoughts conjured him, Jake suddenly surged forward, his eyes wild, and grabbed my shoulders, his grip fierce and terrifyingly urgent. You have to trust me, please. They're coming for everyone who knows anything. You need to hide, to escape, but what about you? I yelled back, forcing my heart to remain steady as it threatened to race away from me. What are you going to do? You're not leaving us, right? His gaze faltered for a moment, and in that split second, I saw more than a man caught in peril. I saw the friend who had once laughed with us in the office, the ally who had once believed in the same cause. I didn't want this to happen. I didn't have a choice. He shouted, desperation rendering every syllable raw. You need to run. If they know you're with me, his voice cracked, and then something flickered in the depths of his eyes. Betrayal? Regret? I couldn't be sure, but it seeded an unshakable doubt within me. I wanted to believe in his righteousness, but the shadows of doubt loomed larger with every word, yet just as the chaos thrummed with deafening uncertainty, a hand gripped my arm from behind, squeezing tight, familiar strength anchoring me back to reality. Let's go. Mia shouted, her eyes darting anxiously between Jake and the shifting crowd. This place is going to explode. In my heart, I knew we were running, but it felt more like being swept away by a current and inevitable displacement, a choice made under duress. With a resolute nod, Rachel shouted for Jenna, and I glanced at Jake one last time, a silent pledge hanging in the air between us. We would survive this, but at what cost? At that moment, I hadn't realized then the deep, simmering anger that still resided within me. Anger for Jake's betrayal, anger for the corporation that had put profit above our safety. A fierceness ignited in my chest, fueling my sprint on the conference room's polished floors. Each step throbbed with all that we had exposed, all we had fought for, but there remained a lurking fear. Would we ever find our way back to that light? We dashed toward a side door, the clamors of uncertainty still roaring outside. As we burst through, I spotted a flicker of motion, a flash of color among the chaos. A woman was hunched over behind a parked car, her face pale and smeared with dirt, clearly having been caught off guard too in the storm of upheaval. I paused, feeling an overwhelming urge to reach out. "Are you okay?" I called out, leaning toward her. Her gaze met mine, wide and frantic, a world of fear reflected in her cobalt eyes. Just as she opened her mouth to answer, a dark figure loomed behind her, and without hesitation, I sprinted toward her, my heart pounding, every sense screaming at me to save her, to protect her. "Tash! No!" Jake shouted from behind me, his voice laced with urgency, but I was already in motion. "Run!" I yelled at her, shoving her away just as the figure lunged forward. My body collided with the ground, every nerve igniting in pain, but I refused to relent. Behind me, a shot rang out, echoing against the concrete. "No!" I screamed back, heart pounding like a war drum as I turned my head in disbelief to where chaos continued to spiral out of control. I did not have to look for the pain transmuting into horror among my friends. It echoed in my heart, reverberating with likelihood that had become horrifyingly real. In that chaotic instant, a wicked chill wrapped itself around my spine. The war I had only glimpsed it was now fully upon us, unpredictable and unforgiving. My fists balled in anger, igniting the spark of defiance that surged through me. If I could just get back to my friends, alert them, alert the world. But as I turned to find my footing in this battlefield of corporate greed and intimidation, I recalled Jake's final words with sharp clarity. "If they know you're with me." A sick realization rolled through me, a shattering echo that made my heart stutter as gravity pulled me back. If they believed Jake to be a target, what did that make me? And then, through the murmur of chaos and dread, clear as a bell, came the next chilling revelation. If there was a bounty on our heads, how could we trust anyone? I forced myself to ignore the icy grip of despair wrapping around my chest, each breath coming with an almost physical effort. As the crowd continued to erupt around me, panic could have easily overtaken my senses. But amid all of it, an ember of clarity ignited within me, a recognition of purpose, a sharp understanding that we were at war, and every conflict needed a soldier willing to step into the fray. Stumbling to my feet, I realized I had an opportunity here, a chance not just to save myself or even Jake, but to stand for something much larger. The injustices that had plagued so many before us came pressing into my mind, and I couldn't bear to let them down. If there was any voice left in this battle, it would be mine. I couldn't just run, I had to fight. I caught a glimpse of Rachel, Mia, and Jenna, huddled near the edge of the parking lot, eyes scanning the chaos as fear flickered across their faces. Without a moment's hesitation, I sprinted towards them, toward the heart of my newfound resolve, my sisters in arms who shared this anguish and hope. They had each witnessed the darkness of corporate malfeasance, and now, it was our time to rally. "Get ready!" I shouted, urgency lacing my voice. "It's time to fight back. If Jake's right, if they're after us, we need to gather everyone. They can't silence all of us." The moment hung thick in the air, our glances colliding as we absorbed the gravity of what lay ahead. But just then, I felt an overwhelming Forcean impact that sent me crashing to the ground. A muffled cry escaped from my lips, and as I rolled to face the chaotic scene, I recognized the familiar streak of red that accompanied Rachel's terrified eyes. I struggled to push myself upright, but the confusion had begun to evolve into something more sinister. People barreled towards us, but the lightning flashes of awareness gripped me. A momentary glimmer of ease washed over my panic. I wasn't alone. In the sea of turmoil, I could still discern solidarity blossoming amongst our co-workers who bore their own burdens. The flames of rebellion flickered in their eyes, mirroring my own resolve. I had each of them, just as they had me. Then, in an instant, clarity sparked in my mind. We need everyone to know what's happening. Find the others. My voice, fueled by raw urgency, rang out above the fray. And as the words left my lips, I saw my coworkers spring into motion, shuffling toward their desks, gathering phones, laptops, anything that could help us spread the word. A collective energy pulsed through us. People no longer withered under Jake's threats but began to reclaim their voices. As I ducked and dove past the remnants of chaos, I found my footing. A flicker of hope surged within me, and I called out for Jenna, hoping her friend's connection might just be the light we needed shining through the darkness. We've got to move, get to the media, spread the word. Fast. Amidst hurried footsteps, I caught a glimpse of Jake framed against the chaos, his figure wolfish and desperate. But this time, something had shifted. He no longer felt like our protector. He was another player in this deadly game, just like the rest of us. If he had turned, if he had chosen power over humanity, then it was time we made our move. Emerging from the throng of panicked employees, Jenna met my gaze, breathless with determination. She's on her way. She shouted, revealing an unexpected coil of courage within her. But we have to stall. We have to buy time until help arrives. Moments later, the front entrance erupted, sending shockwaves through the crowd as a group of masked figures stormed in, their intentions unmistakable. A wave of visceral terror cascaded over me, crashing against the walls of urgency that had fortified my resolve. But I couldn't let that fear consume me. That I felt something surge within, then I turned to face my colleagues. Listen to me. We have to stand together. This is our time to be seen, to be heard. If we join forces, if we stand strong, they won't intimidate us. My voice held stark determination, cutting through the air, and in response, everyone began to rally, gathering strength from each other's fears and hopes, using the spiraling chaos as our unifying battle cry. As the waves of the crowd drew tight, I caught a glimpse of another familiar face in the confusion. It was Mia, standing at the forefront alongside Rachel, the very representation of defiance compacted into one small outrage of a woman. She raised a phone to her ear, desperately trying to make contact while pushing through the throng of bodies. We just need to hold on for a little longer. The masked figures stormed forward, intent on sowing chaos, but with every step they took, our united presence began to stand firm as a bulwark against the tide of intimidation. Each voice joined in an uprising of accountability, pouring into the air, carrying our stories and determination. It was an orchestra of bravery, an anthem that surged with truth. You will not silence us. We shouted in unison, voices rising against the cacophony as our fears transformed into flames of defiance. Yet, just as it appeared our resurgence might intimidate the advancing figures, the ground beneath us trembled violently, and the alarms continued to echo, a feral reminder that the threat was real and devastating. Every chaotic swirl of the crowd, every heartbeat filled with desperation, echoed within me the urgency of solidarity. Then the realization crashed over me like a wave. This moment could be our turning point, the fulcrum upon which our fight balanced, the sudden onset of a blitz that might finally bring the truth to the surface. Come on. We push back now. I yelled, the raw emotion pushing through me as if on instinct. I led the way, forging through, drawing strength from the embers igniting in our community. As we surged forward, I glanced back at Jake. A flicker of something unfamiliar crossed his face. Was it regret? Betrayal? But there was no room for consideration of that now. There was only the battle of emotions fueling our chaos. Stern resolve, fear transformed into action, despair into courage. When we reached the front line, we met a wall of resistance, shouting, confusion, and panic colliding. Our collective resonance rang through the air, transforming fear into a locked and loaded strength determined to stand firm. I caught a moment to pause, realizing the artistically tragic irony of it all. Just as fear threatened to silence us, hope breathed life into a stronger symphony. "I will not be silenced," I affirmed quietly, too loud to keep in the dusty quiet of my thoughts, and then, without knowing how or why, in that very instant, we surged forward, the barrier of solitude crumbling as the crowd behind me pushed with ferocity into the storm, immovable as the waves crashing against itself. All our dread was interwoven with our joy. Every moment we had suffered a stepping stone leading to this crescendo of transformation. "Together," we cried, the words lifting as a wildfire igniting across the office, across the city, a grateful roar against the ravaging shadows seeking to quell our truth. In that breathtaking moment, the culmination of sacrifice, unity, and fight, I felt free, fiercely alive. And with every desperate heartbeat, I knew that we would not only survive this, we would shatter the silence, revealing the truth lurking behind the corporate walls. This was our battle cry, and we would never surrender. And somehow, in the cacophony of it all, even as the world around blurred into a frantic shadow, I felt a sense of belonging. This wasn't just about fighting against tyranny. This was about standing for each other, revealing the strength that lay dormant within us all. And in an occurrence decidedly unpredictable, chaos and silence began to collapse as one into a single, powerful harmony, our collective roar filling the void, resonating through the very core of who we were. The swells of hope washed over all of us, and as I gazed into the eyes of my comrades in arms, I asked myself, when darkness delivered its finest blow, would we rise up as the warriors we were meant to be? I knew then, this was just the beginning.